Okay. All right, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Wellington Board of Selectmen. It is Monday, October 16th, 2023. If you would join at 6:30 p.m., if you will join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. First regular item of business is approval of minutes. You should have our October 2nd regular meeting minutes in your packet.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Seconded, motion by Mike, seconded by Jim. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Karen, like the order that we have. All right, that brings us to present to speak. If you are online or in the room and would like to speak, I ask you to identify yourself for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes. Anyone online? Don't all raise your hand at once. Going once, going twice, anyone in the room? All right, you will have another chance at the end of the meeting if you so choose. Correspondence, there is a list of correspondence in your packet. They are all available in the selectman's office. Comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move on. Mr. Sposato is, oh no, sorry, we're not moving on to public works. I'm up. I have no new updates on the steep grant. School building committee has not met, so I assume you have no
Correct.
updates.
That
Still work
next
in
meeting
progress.
is the, Lucas.
The first one in just in November.
I believe the calendar might
November
be.
1st is a Wednesday.
I'll check, carry on.
All right, nothing new on ARPA. We have not met since the last meeting. Our next meeting will be November 6th. Staff updates. We still have 2 openings for CIP and Board of Finance recording secretaries. I'm happy to say that we received a few applicants. We're reviewing those with the chairs of those committees and hope to have an appointment before us at our next meeting. And the interviews for the Human Services Director will take place this Wednesday. So we hope to see some forward movement from that shortly. And lastly, I wanted to update you on the cannabis, recreational cannabis shop. There was one proposed in Wellington through regulations prior to the change that they made. And it opened this weekend in Phelps Plaza. And I just wanted to remind folks that under the 2021 law, a 3% municipal tax is imposed on gross receipts. And those funds will become part of our general revenue that must be used for, there's some very specific purposes by which they need to be used. And I'll give you an idea of what those are. There can be streetscape improvements and other improvements around, and it just as in communities where cannabis retailers, hybrid retailers, and micro cultivators are located. So if that can be other roads not around there, but it says in a community. So there's an ability to make some improvements there with those dollars. Education programs or youth employment and training programs in the municipality. Services for individuals living in the municipality who were released from DOC custody, probation, or parole. Mental health or addiction services. Youth service bureaus and juvenile municipal juvenile review boards. Sorry, tongue tied tonight. And or community civic engagement efforts. So a variety of things, but very specific uses. So the incoming administration is going to need to familiarize themselves with this new source of revenue and look for ways to use that. So I look forward to that coming in. Any questions?
Did the finance department give us the charge number for that?
I am sure they will set something up. Nothing has come in yet. So there is some language that basically says the municipality needs to invoice the retailer. So there's some work on our part to understand the whole process
Right.
by which we ask for the funds and we get them. And then once we have a fund, it will get, things
That
will get
just
set up.
sounds like it needs to be in its own bucket.
Well, the law says that it goes into general revenue,
But it has to be tracked.
but it has to be tracked,
Yeah.
so how that's handled through the finance department is still, it's still a work in progress, so it's not its own fund. But it has to be used for certain purposes, so my thought, although there's no language that says so, at some point there could be an audit to those funds. Always be prepared for that. So, again, by the time those dollars come in, this board will not, be in, yes, at the table, so it'll be something for, the new administration, again, to familiarize themselves with, so.
Can I just go back to SBC for a moment?
Absolutely, back to
The
SBC.
next scheduled SBC meeting is this Wednesday.
Oh, okay,
I thought it was this week, but I wasn't sure
It
when
is.
you asked. So it is scheduled for this Wednesday. I will poll the members and make sure we're ready for it, but I assume we will meet.
okay,
We have, I believe, the final edits were down to the last little tiny bits of edits for the report.
great,
So hopefully we can,
excuse me.
get that out to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education for a quick review to make sure we didn't miss something or misquote something or whatever for a final check.
Okay, great. And, I had asked last time for, someone from SBC to come to this board. So maybe one of our next two meetings with that final report.
Yes,
I
yes.
assume
Once
you as
the,
the chair and our rep will probably be that person, but.
it's entirely possible. Yeah, once the SBC has agreed it's ready to get
Yes.
out to everyone. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And that won't be a final signed report. It'll be out to this board and the Board of Ed to make, again, like I said, to make sure we are not missing something or we didn't misquote something, whatever. So
Okay.
that'll sort of be a review step.
Okay,
And then we will sign it as the final report.
sounds great. Look forward to that. All right, that brings us, no other questions on my status report, brings us to Public Works. Now, Mr. Spizzato, you are up.
Can you hear me okay?
You can.
All right. So roadside mowing's still going on around town. We've been filling in washouts with all the rain. We provided traffic control on Polster Road. Polster Road is 100% paved. It's backfilled. It's loomed, seeded. The guardrails are all fixed on it. We had an accident with a tractor trailer truck going around. That's all been fixed, which is finally a long-awaited thing to be done. We've been grading the dirt roads around town, patched holes. We've chipped brush around town from trees that have come down. Let's see. And that's pretty much about it. That's what we've been doing.
I wanna thank Public Works Department for all that they did in keeping Polster Road in the best shape possible in the 3 months absence of the contractor. We were working with them to get resolution. Our attorneys were involved at one point, trying to make sure we could get a resolution on this. Lessons were certainly learned. There was, Troy had a concern with the transition from Love's area, that side onto Polster Road. And they came back out today. That, so it's complete as of today. So thank them for their work, and that was not an easy process with the amount of rain that we received, but it's fine. I'm happy to say it's finally done, not without lots of bumps along the way. So, any other questions regarding Public Works? How are we ready for winter? Everything in good shape?
It will be. Some of the trucks we found, we brought in Woodstock Repair this year to service all the trucks. And so as they've been going through, they found some issues with the trucks. One of the trucks just had new kingpins, new front tires. Truck 4 has a turbo that needs to be replaced. There's some hoses that need to be redone. So there's some stuff, but everything will be up and ready to go. So.
Or do you think by catching some of that in this process, it will alleviate further issues and repairs?
I
down
believe
the
so.
road?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's probably a little bit of a hit to your budget now.
Yeah.
Pay off.
In the long. Yep.
All right. Anything else, sir?
No, I'm just looking at the calendar, trying to figure out
When it's gonna snow?
when do the risks start picking up?
Yeah. think it depends on who you look for. The groundhog will tell us something else in a few months too.
Which farmer's almanac.
That's right. I subscribe to the one that says it's gonna be warm, but there's not many of
Warm
those
and
out
wet,
there.
or cold and wet, so.
Yeah, but if we had as much snow as we had rain, hold on to your
I'd like to
hat,
repeat a
folks.
theme.
Yeah,
That will be the next.
That will be the
administration
next-
Issue to deal with.
yeah, there are, lots of things I will miss. Not sleeping at night when it snows will not be one of them.
Yeah.
So, all right, thank you, Troy. All right, first item of new business, hunting on the former, this should say former Cattle Rock property. So the town, through tax sale, acquired, the former Cattle Rock property and a portion in Ashford, the town of Ashford acquired. We have now a second request, from the same resident, asking us to allow hunting on that property. The request was previously denied by both Wellington and the town of Ashford, just for some back history, not as a precursor to our decision. The email that you have in your packet from the resident and the backup in documentation on the request asked that both towns add this to their agendas. Ashford took action on the 10th. And just for your information purposes, they've denied on the Ashford portion. They had the largest portion of land. So we have been asked to consider allowing hunting. I will entertain discussion.
I will first say that I am pro hunting, have hunted myself. I'm in general in support of it. Particularly because everyone I know who is a legitimate hunter is careful, respectful, understands what they're doing, respects the nature. What I think is important for our discussion here is figuring out where the town fits into having a piece of property that they allow hunting on. I think the general concept sounds okay to me, but I really don't understand where we are. And I hope this discussion helps me understand where we are on liability issues, and then if we allow one person, how we would allow other people. And I just don't know the answers to that, so that's what I'm anxious to work out.
Yeah, I have similar views here. I don't see anything wrong with hunting. I've done that in the past. I'm not presently a hunter, but I have hunted in the past. I do remember Ed Taman's comments when we met with Ashford about a year or so ago. I see he just sent in an update. It looks like, again, you know, as the attorney handling the property, he certainly gave his opinion. He didn't see any issues with that regard.
I just want to clarify, he's not the attorney handling the property, he was the attorney for the previous owner.
Right, for the previous owner. So, I have no problem with private landowners doing that and all that, and I think I have no problem the state does it on state property. They have a lottery type system. I'm not so sure about town property. That's the only thing. I don't want to be in the business of handing out permission slips and licenses and all that, for a very specific parcel of land. I mean, we have a lot of open space, and then I don't want, you know, does that mean all the other open spaces, parcels that are of certain size get opened up for the same thing, so. I guess that's where my head is, it's kind of same, different journey, but same place where you ended up.
I think I land somewhere in with you all, again, not a hunter, pro hunting, not opposed to hunting. I come at its concerns from the town's perspective. And if we decide to do this, if this board decides to take this up, I think before we say yes, we need to understand what the process would look like to allow. We have a request from an individual who through his previous relationship with the owner was allowed to hunt. I'm not comfortable just saying, yes, you can hunt on this town property, that we would have to come up with a town process. Where would that be allowed? What would that process look like? Whether it's a lottery system like the state, and is that something that we discuss now, start the process on? We may or may not come to an end result, and the new board in a month from now will have to continue the discussion. And that's, you know, this is one of those, if we're not gonna say no, and we're gonna say, let's investigate all of the possibilities, there just may not be an outcome this hunting season. Not to say it can't happen. I think there are conversations we can have with many stakeholders, namely townspeople. And Mike, I think it was,
I
no,
believe.
I was talking with someone else and thought it was you for a second. It wasn't about how far you have to be from property lines and from others. Our piece of property is the entrance to it at least, and it's a large parcel. It's right up to,
It's in between.
it's right in between two residential properties, but it does go back a ways. Our property, I don't have the exact acres of this piece. The request is to hunt on this piece, but I think we have to look at a broader, policy for the town. And, this piece is somewhere approximately 34 acres, I think. It may, somewhere between 30, and 40 plus acres is this piece of property. And if we did, again, we're only saying yes to this portion of that Candle Rock property, because as of today, Ashford has already said no. So, we wouldn't be saying they could hunt here and then work with Ashford to be able to hunt on any of that other property. It would
I think-
basically be the land
I
side.
think we would need a process also, part of the process we need to figure out is if we need to authorize someone such as the first selectman or woman to be the person who signs the letter granting permission,
Mhm.
because I believe you would have to have written permission. And so that kind of goes to Jim's concern about now are we starting to hand out tickets, if you will. Not that that can't be done, but we need to make sure that we have the right authorization, that someone can give that permission and how that permission is granted. Because I believe on state, well, because of the lottery, the state essentially decrees permission upon somebody. So we need some way of putting on paper that we've decreed permission.
Right, we're not the state, so we can't just probably.
Right, we have to
Right.
figure out the legal way that we would do
So
that, if we were
here's-
gonna go forward with
Here's what I'll suggest, since what I'm not hearing is an overwhelming no,
it.
right? We're not saying, no, we're not interested in that, we're gonna say no, now they can request again, we're saying, let's do some more homework. What, I'm gonna start out with making a suggestion, I'll reach out and start doing some, research, I'm gonna start with CCM, they can do a broad search for us on, towns that do allow hunting on town-owned property. And then we can, from there, we can take a look and see what their process is to help understand, have conversations. I always like to leave legal to last because they cost us money, but I think this is one we cannot avoid having them weigh in on. And what that looks like,
No, I think that's a prudent,
from
I think that's a
us,
prudent
so.
path forward.
okay, and then again,
And then maybe after that, a DEEP, I'm sure we'd be more than happy to advise.
Yeah, I'm sure there are
Absolutely.
towns in the rural parts of the state who have dealt with this already.
yes.
And know a lot of the answers that we need.
And I know we had a request from a resident a couple of years ago, and at the time we didn't have anything in place, so we shared that with them. They had moved from, and I believe it was Stafford, that they were allowed to hunt at one point, so I'm trying to recall the conversation I had had with our friends in Stafford. So I'll start with there, start reaching out to some of our neighbors, see what we can get and start doing some research. Again, this may be a longer term
Then the next. two
project,
meetings.
then 2 meetings and the ability to hunt. I'm thinking more in terms of a season, right? Hunting is only
Yeah,
a particular.
Depending on what you're
Right.
hunting.
And so, I will respond back to, the resident who requested and just let him know that we're not saying no, but we're gonna move forward with, some information and research and to keep him posted on that.
Yeah, the other thing that I would, that I think would be prudent to protect the town is to understand what the condition of that property is, because I know that property went through a lot of that property experienced a lot of different activity on it, including EPA involvement,
Yeah.
cleanups and all that. And while the laws benefit the hunter by limiting and benefit the property owner by limiting a certain amount of liability, if you have a dangerous condition on your property, the town doesn't get out of that liability. If you allow people to use the property with dangerous conditions on it. So I think, if there are pits left over from excavations or whatever, we may want to know that. None of us has walked the property, right?
I have not left the property. I have been in many a meeting, where we discuss, as we've discussed and brought in, it was BL who came in to do, the remediation work or the first step, right? So we're looking for our brownfield grant to do the final remediation and cleanup, so there is still some cleanup that needs to be done. There was corn, on that property. Troy, are you still with us? I will remind folks that this, at least right now, this property is gated and locked. We did do that as soon as we acquired the property. There was corn planted in our portion of that property when we went up there, correct?
Yes, yep, they were. Yep, there's corn. There's like two fields almost. As you go in, there's a field right there, and you go up and around and to the right and to the left. It's almost like a kind of like a crazy T, if it makes any sense. That's how it was kind of set up. And I know one side was pretty wet when we were in there. I mean, that doesn't matter with hunting, but I'm just saying that.
Yeah, so there are definitely some test pits had been dug, so there are probably some obstacles and things
Yeah.
in there.
At one point, there
But
were
the-
piles of wrecked cars that were crushed up
Well-
and buried there, and I think a lot of that, or maybe all of it's been removed, but.
The majority of that was cleaned up. The EPA came in and did that work many moons ago. And so there is still some cleanup to be done, again, while we were looking for
Yeah,
the
that was
radiation grant.
Years ago.
Yeah, but not as much. The majority of the land is in Ashford. The majority of the contamination was originally in Willington on the smallest piece of property. So we'll look at all of those things and I'll try to come back with an update. And at the very least, we'll have some healthy research to lead for the new administration. to look
This is
at.
Connecticut general statutes that's in
Yeah.
our packet here, addresses all those things we've talked about, so. I was just glancing through it as we were discussing, so, but I'd take a look at it.
Yeah, and I think,
It pretty much says as long as you're not charging anybody a fee to enter the property, you have no duty to, the owner has no duty of care to keep the land or any part thereof made available safe for entry or for use by other recreational purposes, or to give any warning of a dangerous condition, use, structure, or activity on the land to persons entering for recreational purposes. So there's a bunch of really wide open language there. But I'm agreeing that, you know, if this residence is nearby,
yeah,
Ashford clearly does not want hunters on their land. You know, there's then appropriate signage you probably have to put up.
Right.
Maybe one type of hunting, maybe it's shotguns and archery versus rifles and something like that, and based on neighborhood. That's something you gotta.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what boundary markers are in that property as well, so that's something else to look at, so.
So we may look, I think it'd be good to just gather some basic information and then the future board of selectmen can
Yeah, I think.
choose to evaluate it or not.
And I think, again, if yes is the direction we're going, and right now we're at the definite maybe, I think bringing, getting townspeople to weigh in on this, is important to hear. So while someone on the Stafford side of town may not have a feeling about it, those who live closer to this property, may want to weigh in and share their concerns, so, and in either direction. Okay. Perfect, all right, but again, just want to remind folks, as of now, the property is noted for no trespassing. All right, on to our favorite item, tax refunds. I will move to refund Linda Shane, refund in the amount of $155.66.
Second.
Seconded by Jim, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
I,
Aye, motion carries. I move to refund financial service vehicle trust, I'm guessing that's what that stands for. A refund in the amount of $235.06.
second.
Seconded by Mike, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I love when it removes. I move to refund Honda Lease Trust. A refund in the amount of $927.82.
Second.
Seconded by Jim, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I move to refund JP Morgan Chase, a refund in the amount of $291.05.
Second.
Seconded by Mike, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. I move to refund James P. Rowley, $460.45.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Sorry, reading them off. I move to refund Ivana Johnson, not $33.35.
Second.
Seconded by Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I'll thank our tax collector and assessor for a small refunds this week. All right, item 9, old business, the volunteer fire department personnel tax abatement ordinance amendment. So you have before you two versions of the ordinance in draft form. One shows you the correct, the adjustments, the other isn't clean looking, but I want you to be able to see what was changed. So this, we've discussed before, the draft ordinance has been reviewed by our town attorney. The changes, the significant changes that were made, including on page 1 under purpose, updating the public act to the current public act, allowing the increase, and the public act 19-36 that allows up to $2,000 for an individual, and it includes the ability to include retired volunteers with 25 years of service.
I just want to make sure I understand which verse, so,
So this shows every place it was edited. This is just a clean read.
okay,
This
so
is
this
what I
and this.
printed out for you
Yeah.
first and then thought, you can't actually see the changes.
Okay.
It's nice.
In the
to
end,
read
they're
through.
both the same, but this
They're
one
both the
shows the
same.
edits, gotcha.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And so the next major changes you will see are under, item, eligibility item 2, where we added, section E to specifically include retired volunteer firefighters or emergency medical technicians who completed at least 25 years of service. And that goes to the new, category allowed within the, act. Item 3, updated to meet current date. So if we were to move this to town meeting and it gets approved at town meeting, it would allow the ordinance to take effect on July 1, 2024. What that would mean is you're kind of a year behind. So the fire departments both just turned in their eligible staff in August from last year. And that goes into effect for the taxes that are due July 1, 2024. So we're saying if we make this change, it will be on those. Normally, we'd want to move ahead and not look back, but this act passed through Connecticut in 2019. So I don't see a reason why the work that they already performed would not be eligible if the people of Wellington agreed with the amended
Because it
ordinance.
was in the allowable time of the
Correct,
law.
because the act was,
Yeah.
if we were doing this back in 2019, I think we'd look a year ahead. But I don't think
Right.
that is necessary. And the argument from the fire chiefs was that they wanted to be able to use this additional incentive to get new volunteers. And so waiting another year does not help their cause, in my mind. Yeah, under certification, that change was simply me typing wrong and retyping. Under the abatement schedule, all of the changes you see in items A through D increase those amounts. They were originally based on $1,000 total, and in increments, they got to the $1,000. This doubled those, so you get there a little bit faster. So instead of a member with 2 years of service would get $1,000 instead of 500, and so on. And then we added item E, which is if a member is retired and completed 25 years of service, they would be entitled to $1,500 abatement of property taxes. And the only other addition is that we would add language, we left the original dates of the ordinance, and we will add the new amended, published and effective if and when those happen at a town meeting. And the previous ordinance did not have a public hearing. It went from the Board of Selectmen to a town meeting where it was approved. It did, however, go through review by the Board of Finance and the assessor. There was lots of back and forth between them. I did run this through the assessor because there were no significant changes, just dollar amounts. And recognizing the act, she did not feel that there was anything of concern. She was comfortable with the changes. on that. We did not take this through Board of Finance, but we certainly could. The Board of Finance did not object the first time the ordinance went through, and the townspeople adopted the ordinance, and I think that's the important part for me. If we were talking about significant dollars,
Right, it's not a new ordinance.
it's not a new
an update.
word, yeah, and it's an update, so I wasn't sure that whole process, and that was done out of courtesy, not out of, a policy or procedure that was required. So it's up to us whether we wanna send it back to have someone else review it, if we feel like a public hearing would be necessary first, or move this forward to town meeting. Thoughts, comments?
I'm thinking more on the lines of public hearing, a town meeting. Just to get the commentary. I mean, I don't have anything really against what's here. I mean, look, it's in line with everything we discussed with the earlier concerns I had about tax payments and things like that, but that's cleared up because that should be two separate things.
They should, so.
And I see them, they're not in there, so.
Yeah, and what Jim is referring to is the original amendment that Chief Snyder proposed had withdrawn that section where it said you must be going 2 years back, you have to be current with your taxes for 2 years in order to be eligible. And so Chief Snyder heard us and our concerns the first time it was presented, and he actually withdrew that language. And so it's not in here. So the only thing from the original ordinance that changed are adding those new eligibilities and then amending the dollar amount. So he did withdraw that.
Yep.
And we did not, it is not here for consideration. I do think it's important that while we want to incentivize folks for their volunteer service in our fire departments, we also recognize that there is a civic responsibility.
I think it works pretty well, right, for the health, Mike?
Yeah, I think I've voiced my concerns about that thing in the past, I think, because I was in a position one time where my mortgage company was late paying my taxes. And I was not eligible for the thing for 2 years, and I think that is absolutely wrong. I think that is punitive. It's a punishment to the people who donate their time to the department. There is absolutely no, in my mind, there's no valid reason to say you were late with your taxes 2 years ago, you can't have this incentive for serving your town. I think it's completely insulting to the people who spend, this year will be my 40th year in the fire department. And if my mortgage company is late, or if I'm late 5 days paying my taxes 2 years ago, I still have earned what I earn. Now, of course, because I'm elected to a board right now, I always opt out every year. I don't take my abatement because I'm an elected official. But that's my choice because I'm an elected official. So I still disagree with that part of it. I have no qualms with any of this. I still think that part should be removed, but that's not in front of us anymore.
And just, Jim, for purposes, both fire departments benefit from this. They've chosen to use it in different ways, but it is meant for both fire departments, not just one.
Right.
So,
So my point is that I'm unhappy that that revision has been removed from consideration. But I have no concerns about what is here. What is being changed is appropriate. It follows the update in the state law. So I think it's the right thing to do.
yeah, and I really like that it added those who retired from service, and again, there was a lot of years, and recognizing that, and it puts those in. I often question how many of those folks actually retired from, because I think both of our departments have members who have served well over the 25, and in some way, they still participate.
Yeah, I'm
So
at
they're-
40 this year.
Right, so they're retired, and how much are they really retired, but they fall into
I
that.
can do that as a part of the training aspect, right?
Absolutely.
You train by learning, asking somebody senior,
Yes,
hey, old guy, what you do?
yeah.
How'd you
I
handle this
I
and
just,
that, you know?
because they don't technically retire,
Yeah.
how we qualify them for retirement well,
I'm only-
the
Well, the
departments will have to
difference,
put
the
that on.
difference would be that they would not meet the requirement of attending the 5 training
Meeting.
sessions anymore.
And so.
They would have done their time, so they don't have to meet this eligibility anymore. That would be the retired.
And I think a lot of those members in both departments, and in a second, I'll ask Chief Snyder to weigh in, excuse me, and Chief Moore, I don't see on the meeting. Those members sat in different roles that are still outlined here, administrative roles that allow them to still partake in this. So still recognizing their years of service which again, I think is important into that. Chief Snyder, I see you had your hand up and you put it down. You still want to speak? I'm welcome to hear your comments. Oh, Steve,
Can you hear me?
you sure can.
Okay, good. Yeah, I have some concerns about the drafts that are in question here. When I initially turned that into you guys at the Board of Selectmen level, there was some concerns by the board with the percentages of calls being changed and things like that, percentages of training being changed. So I think that's what got revised and I put back in there in the next draft to go back to vote, I guess you'd say. And there's a draft that went to the Emergency Services Committee that that stuff was put back to the original percentages. But the concern, like Mike has, with the, I guess I call it a punishment for being late on your taxes, was removed and it stayed out of there. So I question there's 2 different drafts that you might have. One, again, that was revised to put those percentages back to where the Board of Selectmen wanted them. And that's the one that went to the Efficiency Study Committee and the Emergency Services Efficiency Committee, I should say. And so I have a question that there might be 2 different drafts, an updated one that was passed unanimously at the Emergency Services Efficiency Committee and the one that you have in front of you with the original request that had less percentages of meetings, I believe it was, and more percentages of trainings as opposed to leaving the percentages of requirements alone. So again, I do have a concern that it's not the same draft that went to the Emergency Services Committee.
I will say, we did not send a draft to the Emergency Services Committee.
It was,
Right.
it was,
May have been discussed, but it was not the Board of Selectmen's draft.
right. So what happened was the way it unfolded was you guys requested those changes, or the Board of Selectmen had concerns about the changes in percentages of requirements and trainings and meetings and things like that. And then at the same time, the Board of Selectmen wanted the Emergency Services Committee to review it, and so that's where it was sent. So it was changed and sent to them, and there it was passed, but it doesn't sound like that version is what you have in front of you.
Well, what I have in front of me still has attendance of 50% of meetings, and this is from you. A minimum of 5 training sessions and 10%. So those numbers did not change.
Right, those numbers from the original ordinance did not change. I had changed them initially, but I put them back.
Put them back, and that's what we have in front of us, as those from the original ordinance.
Yes, the original ordinance numbers. And the only concern I have again is the concern, the punishment, I guess, of being late on your taxes was not in the, was not put back in, as you say.
Would
Okay.
it maybe benefit this process that after this meeting, there's a communication to make sure we're all clear on which version is being debated?
No, well, quite frankly, I think the board, and I don't remember that you participated in the conversation last time. I felt like you took yourself out of it.
I took myself out of it because,
When I say the board, I'm talking about those that participated, that Jim and I were both in agreement that the 2-year was something we wanted to see remaining in the ordinance. So that's why it's still in the draft. That's where the board stood on that. We had, that had both, and I'm not saying you didn't, but you just didn't participate in the conversation.
right,
And understanding why. Let me point out that on page 1, it also, I mean, you'll see here in the middle paragraph, increase from 2,000 to 4,000, that's a household. So if there are two or more members in, participating
Right.
within a household, it goes from a
Yeah, it
max
does say
to a
that.
max of
Yep.
4,000, so, and just so no one's reading it thinking that it's 4,000 per person, it's per household, it would be 2 to 4. It's not point that out.
Right, the only point I was making was that if we're not sure about which version, would it be
But-
beneficial to just make sure?
Well, I think the concern that I'm hearing Chief Snyder say, and the concern you have, is that 2 years of being, in the past 2 years, you have to be current on your taxes in order to be eligible. That's the concern that you have.
Yeah, that part of it was a big part of the decision to revise the ordinance in such a manner that we did. Because again, it seems more like Mike was saying, things happen and it turns out to be more of a punishment and a discouragement, as opposed to the whole point of this ordinance and the whole point of the state statute is to encourage and incentivize volunteers to remain active at the fire department. So
So
it's
I would hope it's not a discouragement for folks to pay their taxes, right? It's not supposed to, and encourage you not to pay your taxes. I see how you might feel that it's punitive. And then, you know, that there's certainly a penalty there. I have some pretty strong feelings about that. And I know that was something that was debated quite a bit, when the ordinance was originally drafted as well. That was something that came up, when I did my research on this ordinance originally, in many a minute.
Right, I understand if you haven't paid your taxes, but if you were late 2 years ago. The only thing that comes out of that clause being in the ordinance is a punishment. There is no benefit to the tax rolls of the town. Well, except the town doesn't have to pay the incentive then. So I guess the taxpayers get some money, some money back, and the person who volunteered their time for the community doesn't get the incentive. But yet their taxes might have been paid for 1 year and 11 and a half months, but they were a week late or
Right.
2 weeks late.
Right.
If it was 2 years ago, why would a late tax from 2 years ago keep you from being able to get your incentive? I just think I certainly understand if it says, if you have not paid your taxes, you're not eligible. But that's different from having been, you could be as little as 1 day late 2 years ago, and you would not be eligible for those 2 years. And that I think is unfair.
Any comments, Drew?
Just wondering how this is calculated. I mean, if there's taxes owed and then you get an abatement for the piece right there. I mean, you add the two together, it really doesn't matter. You get the abatement.
Well, they're not receiving cash,
Yeah, they're not receiving
right?
cash.
So it's
It's
an
an
abatement.
adjustment on the bill.
Correct. And for some, they may be eligible for, let's say, currently the 1,700 or 500, and they don't get that much because they don't owe that much in personal property taxes.
Right.
So for some people, and they don't get the difference, right? So they could go from whatever they owe to zero.
If
And
you only own the car or something like that, or
Correct,
renting or something.
correct, and some younger members, that's probably the case for those folks, but, it's. You know, what's current with your taxes? Current as of when you were eligible, and I think that for me. There's a long process between getting the information and determining their eligibility and when they actually get the abatement. And so going back 2 years puts them,
It's more work that
During
we
the
shouldn't even
time.
be doing. Why do we even
Yeah,
have someone at the town office building looking back 2 years? Look at your current thing. Are you current with your taxes or not? If you're not current, you're not eligible. Because the fire department certified the list as what's written in here. They send it to the town, right? And the town, before the town cuts the check, they can say, all right, is this person current right now? Why go through the work of looking back 2 years?
and then we do that, so we use current as 2 years current, so that's, I mean, it's a similar process. Look back, but. I'm certainly comfortable with the, as it stood, I hear everybody's.
I'm
Concerns.
okay, but just looking at it once and rather than digging back, are you current?
So you're suggesting changing, and let me make sure
Well,
I'm in the
and I-
right place.
To be honest with you, to go with what Tom
Because you still-
said,
you still have your
it's not even in here.
Yeah.
So we have to be,
It
that's
is-
why I asked to be clear on the
it is-
revision. You're saying this paper is just the documentation of changes.
No, this is the ordinance. What you
Okay.
see in red are the changes.
Right. So there's nothing in here about the 2-year anyway, so
I
it's
didn't,
passive.
I didn't see it.
Yes, there is. Item
Where
5,
is
under
it?
eligibility on page 2. Eligible members receiving this benefit must be current on their taxes for at least 2 years.
Oh, it is here.
It was in the original,
Okay.
it's part of the original ordinance.
Second page.
I read over it somehow.
Yeah, no.
I mean, that was in the original ordinance, but
That is correct.
Yes.
one of the first things that was removed from any draft towards a new revision of the ordinance. That was one of the first things, and that's part of the discussion. And as Jim was saying, I mean, the way we're looking at it from the fire department side and as an incentive to volunteer your time and to go, serve the town of Wellington, it's if you have a tax liability of $500 and you get an abatement of 1,500, your abatement would, clear out the $500 taxes, and you would have, if you owe $500 and you have a $1,500 total tax liability, and you get $1,500 of your total tax liability, you would gain $1,000. Is what the way it's written. It would basically take care of a delinquent tax.
I completely disagree with it, taking care of a delinquent tax. It should not negate what was owed. It's taken off of the liability from that year. It should never negate what was owed. So if somebody didn't pay back taxes, this abatement would not go, I would not be in favor of, and would be happy to speak out against an abatement that took away what was not paid by someone. And I will say, this is very, Mike has shared with us an instance where it may have happened to him. It is very rarely an issue.
Yeah, it's very
in
rarely
my
an issue.
mind,
And
very
the
rarely.
the thought process is if you are current and you owe $500, or you're delinquent and you owe $500, you're still gaining the tax abatement to cover you, whether it's a current $500 or a delinquent $500.
No,
That's
it's an abatement off of your assessed property, right? So it comes off of,
your tax liability. Total tax liability is the way it's written.
yeah, it should not be used, it will not be used to cover what was owed by any means.
Well, the definition of your tax liability, I think, is in the statute. So I guess that's where we came up with this.
Right,
Is
it's in
Tax
that current
liability. I don't know what a tax liability, if it's a,
year, if your taxes are $2,000 and you receive a $1,000 abatement, then you would owe $1,000.
right. And
You
again,
owed
looking at it the
$1,000
same
from last
way.
year, it doesn't negate your $1,000 from last year. I mean, that would still need to be paid, and that would still continue to collect interest, if not paid, and so.
Yeah,
So,
again, again, the thought process is a liability is a liability, and your abatement goes towards any liability. Your tax
Right.
liability, whether it's
I
dollars.
I hear what you're saying, Tom, but that is not the intent of this abatement, nor, do I think we should advocate for such. It should not, it is not used to negate what was owed if someone was late.
Well, the intent is to incentivize volunteering, in the fire department.
Well,
So-
you wanna incentivize volunteering, but not at the cost of our
It's
civic
the-
responsibility.
It seems to be the same thing. Like I said, a positive tax liability or a.
And I will say, it is very rarely an issue with our volunteers, so
Yeah,
our,
very rarely is, but,
I'll let the board discuss now, if
okay,
you will.
yeah,
So. It's, whether or not someone proposes changes to this is a draft, or if we move this draft forward to public hearing, but I have strong feelings against the reason behind the suggestion there, and, I think a lot of why that language was in here, is still valid. That's my stance on it.
Right,
So
well,
I-
that's the advantage of public hearing, right? We'll get a broader perspective from the people who actually have to make the final decision.
And that's where I was going with that. It's like, if you, something you thought you missed here or you wasn't exactly sure, at least get that feedback.
So we are, a town meeting is shaping up for beginning of November. I was hoping to get this ordinance in that. We could certainly call for a public hearing on the draft as it stands and go from there, and then they'll have to be
That's
another,
probably a good
then
next step.
the next board will need to hold a town meeting. I
Because-
don't think we could get two in our time.
I think we just need to keep remembering what it's there for incentivizing volunteers
That's correct.
to go out to fill up 2 calls and to attend training. That's the 3 big things.
But at the same time, there's a separate responsibility
I know.
to pay our taxes, and
which exists
I-
even without this ordinance
that
at
is
all.
correct.
Yes.
Right.
And so to use any abatements to negate some of that, was never the intent of this ordinance from the state perspective or the town perspective. So I will, move that we, send the draft volunteer fire department personnel tax abatement ordinance as amended to public hearing.
A second.
Discussion? Again, that public hearing will get some feedback, either we will make changes to it to move to a town meeting or the next administration, so. All right, all those in favor?
Of sending it to public hearing.
That was the
Aye.
motion, aye,
I will abstain.
abstention. So moved. Okay, so the town meeting that we're hoping to get on, we'll add this as a public hearing. Let me put this in the right folder. All right. A lot of folders over here. All right, that is the last of our regular business. I will move to present to speak. Anyone in the room present to speak? Yes, sir. Identify yourself for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes.
Pete Tanaka, 125 Mason Road. First thing I want to talk about is brush. When do you think we might be able to drop brush at the dump again? The second thing I want to talk about is the civic engagement. Would that be Willington Day for the weed money? Third thing, fire department, is first selectman started talking, discussions with Holland regarding fire department mutual aid. Third thing, on the hunting, there's a difference between parks and forests, so you're gonna have to determine whether that Kettle Rock property is a park or a forest, whether you're gonna be using archery or firearms. There should be a limited number of hunters, so that would require a lottery, and permission slips are generally signed by the executive officer where there's a lot of people.
Thank you.
Did I get in?
Yes,
You have 37 seconds left. You want to say anything else?
That's his breathing time.
It's in front of you.
Anyone online present to speak? Going once, going twice. We'll move on. I'll start by addressing the brush at the dump. We're waiting for our permits, our burn permit.
That's it, that.
So it is still on hold until the process. We are waiting for the permit. We're waiting to see it come through from the fire marshal. We spoke to him last week, and as soon as we get that, we sign it and get it over. Hopefully we'll get our permit. Mobile food share is every other week. It will be here. Oh, I did not write the next date. October 25th. Nice day. Next Wednesday, October 25th, from 11 to 11:30 here at Town Office Building. And Access Agency has a mobile food pantry that is at Willington Woods. That's down in the Senior Center Complex. That will be November, it's once a month on the first Thursday. It's November 2nd from 12 to 1 p.m. and that is open to all. As always, please continue to support our small businesses and restaurants if you can. If anyone is looking for a place to make charitable contributions, the Willington Fuel Bank is in serious need of funds in order to be able to assist our residents outside of any federal or state funding. And donations could be sent to the Town Office Building marked Fuel Bank. If anyone reading or watching our minutes feels so inclined to make contributions. I think it's important to note, while we are accepting applications through the Human Services Department for energy assistance, that we start with a federal program that is open and accepting applications. What folks may have heard about on the news is Operation Fuel. That is a state subsidized program, and there are, they have put a hold on applications until January. They had too many summer and fall applications, so they stopped taking applications. They hope to open again in January if funding permits. Which again is why most folks will then look to other avenues, and the town being one of them. But our current fuel bank could not assist as many as we would like. October 22nd, the public library will hold another 100-year celebration from 2 to 4. So you're welcome to attend that event. I sadly will not be in state and miss that. And again, both of the selectmen received an invitation to that function. The PTA trunk or treat, I misspoke at our last meeting. It is Friday, the 27th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at River Road Athletic Center. So if you're looking for a safe place to trick or treat, you can trunk or treat. Thanks to the PTA. A town meeting is shaping up. We're looking at November 2nd. It will now include a public hearing for the ordinance we just showed a draft of, the Hearst tool purchase, and depending on action at the Board of Finance this week, 2 Board of Education CIP projects could be added to that agenda. So I'll be asking you both for your availability to call town meeting shortly. Any other items for good and welfare? I will remind folks that Tuesday, November 7th, we will have another meeting before then, but Tuesday, November 7th is election day upstairs in the common room. If you'd like to register to vote, the last day to do so online or in person is Tuesday, October 31st.
And I would know, because I checked to be sure that this board serves after the election to the 20th of November. Our last meeting would be the 20th. The new board goes into play on the 21st.
That is correct. So all newly elected take office 2 weeks from election day. Election day is the 7th, Tuesday, the 21st. So,
And I believe the only exception would be certain terms that were filled terms.
no, those, if they're elected, when we appoint, if they were elected, they're appointed to the next municipal election.
Right.
Election day, their term.
Their term,
So then-
right, their term
Right.
begins, their term begins on November 8th. It begins the next day. It begins,
Right.
if they're filling a vacancy. If they filled a vacancy.
Right.
And the new term was that term ended, let's say,
Yes.
so whoever filled your vacancy on Board of Finance.
Finance, yeah,
If that was a term that ended this year,
correct, it did, or
then
would,
the newly elected person would not take effect until November 21st.
right, because that
So,
term should have gone all the way, right?
Yeah, and the town clerk will communicate with any of those unusual offices. And let them
Filled
know.
by unusual people.
That is correct, and the treasurer takes effect January. So, but the majority of those offices, those newly elected, take place on the 21st. So we have 2 more meetings, folks. Not a lot of time to get as much done as I think we'd like, but we will leave plenty of things in the hopper for the new administration. All right, with that, and seeing no other business before us, I will move to adjourn at 7:28 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Have a good night. You're on, son.